Today I'm going to share with you another of my little nuggets of technique, and today I'm going to talk about how to write effective drama scenes or fight scenes, so high drama scenes. So that could be a scene of violence, it could be an escape scene, it could be a car crash, it could be a riot, anything that sort of happens fast. So strangely, even though this is sort of high drama, readers can find these scenes actually not that interesting, and they may end up skimming these scenes just to get back to what they consider to be the real drama, which is their connection with the characters, and the outcome of that character's dilemma. So they're more interested in where this scene is leading rather than the scene itself. So if we want to write these scenes, regardless of that, how do we get around that? How do we make these scenes effective? So here are some things to think about. You could skip the action altogether, leave the character at a suspenseful cliffhanger, and return to the character in the aftermath of the high drama scene. So then we're dealing with that issue that the reader actually wants to know about where this scene is taking the character. What is the consequence of this scene, rather than particularly interested in the scene itself. And this can be quite effective. So implying that this thing has happened, and then that also leaves a lot more to the imagination of the reader, who can piece together the omission of the drama scene. So they're just dealing with everything that came afterwards. So, you could have a character who's covered in blood or had broken their leg or, been smashed in the face or whatever, and then the reader is then filling in the gaps. Another thing to consider is make every high action scene advance the plot. This is really important. So we're not writing high action, we're not writing violence for the sake of violence. It's not a sensational thing. It needs to be important to the story itself. So what is the outcome of this fight or escape or car crash? How does it change things? How does it change the plot? It needs to either deepen the plot or go some way towards resolving a dilemma that the character has. So that's really, really important. The reader will identify if a scene is there purely for drama's sake, and you will lose that reader's trust in you and your writing and your story. Another thing to do is to reveal character through action. Think about the way that your characters react to any given situation. This is something that I teach a lot in my character seminars, that actually it makes your job so much easier if you give your characters something to react against. So if you have a dramatic fight scene and you've got two characters who are very different, they will respond to that scene in very different ways. So it's actually a really useful way to develop character. So I suppose then in that case the fight scene is secondary to the character development and the way that your characters respond to that scene. So another thing to consider is letting your reader choreograph the action. So we talked about this a minute ago, that if you omit the action scene altogether and just show us the aftermath, then the reader will be more invested perhaps in it, in that we are triggering their imagination and they're filling in the gaps. This can also be used in writing the action scene itself. It may be that you first write the scene in all its detail, and then you can start to think about which parts of those details are really necessary, which parts are advancing the plot or advancing character, and which parts of that detail can you actually omit from the scene, and enable the reader to fill in the gaps. And this can be a really powerful way of writing as well. And it's quite fun to experiment with that. You could write an action scene in all its gory detail, slow it right down, get really, really intricate, and then think to yourself, okay, what is really essential detail and what is superfluous? And when you omit the superfluous detail, you'll see that actually in the omission, the energy of that detail can still be there. So experiment with that. You don't need to put every single punch and every single move and every single whack, and you can be more impressionistic. Think about your descriptive choices. When you describe, consider the language that you're using. Pick your verbs to deliver energy and focus. So, an example of this, like a really sort of strong, visceral image, would be, she leapt on him, raining down blows. His tooth was knocked from his head, trailing a kite string of blood, glittering in the overhead light. So obviously that's dramatizing with detail. It's dramatizing with attention to detail, and you making the language the language is actually adding to the drama here. So that's a really powerful phrase, couple of sentences that you would want to keep in your description, and you might want to omit the more kind of detailed sort of he then got up and she slammed into him, and the more straightforward detail around that, and let us fill in the gaps. Play with pace. In situations of extreme stress, time seems to slow down. On the other hand, fights in real time happen very, very fast. So you can use short, choppy words and sentences to speed up action or slow it down by pausing on details or lengthening prose. So just think about how you're articulating, imparting that action in the way that you're structuring your sentences. Short and choppy is fast, and more sort of longer, prolonged will be slowing down the pace. So I'm going to leave you there with that for now, and I hope it's helpful. And just really hope that you're all still writing and you're all still coping okay in these strange times. Take care.